On this prequel episode, we're discussing our Rear Window poll and previewing Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Hello and welcome back to This Film's Lit, podcast we're talking about movies that are based on books. We mentioned it, but we are getting into our summer series. Last summer it was Harry Potter.
And that stretched on.
And that one went a while because, a few more books there. But this one will also take a while because we're putting some time in between them like we did with Harry Potter or some of the Harry Potters.
We need a little bit of buffer time to read these.
If you haven't read Lord of the Rings or haven't read them recently, they are quite lengthy and dense.
Yeah.
And they take some time to get through. I'm not nearly as far through it as I should be at this point.
Yeah, me either. And I do read long books pretty frequently, but these ones, they do take some time to parse, I think. Yeah,
Tolkien's style is definitely not a super quick read style. So we do not have a Learning Things with This Film is Lit this week. We are working on one. We want to have one for one of the next Lord of the Rings prequel episode. We're kind of figuring out what we want to talk about and taking some time to work on that.
And a lot of our ideas are a little bit more involved and are going to involve a bit more research. Yeah. So we want to take our time and do that correctly and have a really good segment for you guys. Yeah,
and we also have I have a bunch of movie notes, including a fun game that we're going to play that I think you and the listeners will enjoy, and that's going to take some time. And I'm sure you have a few book notes.
Yes, I do.
So we're just going to do those instead. But first, before we get to our Lord of the Rings preview, let's talk about our poll. What happened with our poll for Rear Window?
So it didn't get a ton of votes again.
Because nobody's read this.
I'm not surprised by that. But we did get a couple of good comments from people.
Okay.
Ashley on Facebook said that she liked both, but the movie edged out the book. She also said, I thought it was just better represented in a visual medium. Like Katie, I felt like I had to reread passages to figure out what was going on sometimes, which was something that I talked about in our episode, was having to read and reread.
Yeah.
And then Shelby on Twitter said that she liked the short story's atmosphere, but also preferred the movie. She said specifically she liked having Jeffries having willing co-conspirators, which was something that I talked about. And that she thought the detective's involvement was more believable in the movie, which was something that I'm now mad at myself for forgetting to talk about in the main episode. We talked about it a little, but in the story, he specifically sends two cops to search the apartment, without a warrant or anything.
And they just do it?
Yeah, and they just do it.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess the author, didn't know how that worked.
Yeah.
Or
he lucked out and got crooked cops who were just like, sure.
Yeah, right. So Shelby and I both felt that was maybe more accurately presented in the movie, where the detective was like, I'm not doing that.
That makes sense.
So I felt validated by these comments. Thank you for providing them. I'm really looking forward to running these polls for our Lord of the Rings
I think
series.
We'll get a lot more feedback on them.
Yeah, I think we'll get a much better response than
we got a pretty good response on Hitchhiker's Guide, did we not? Or one of them.
We got a pretty good response for Hitchhiker's Guide, but I'm not sure. I don't know how much that was affected by the fact that you made a controversial call with Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah. Well, we got a fair amount of comments on the Instagram, but I thought even we had a number of votes on Twitter and Facebook. I thought we even had, and they were pretty even. Some people agreed with the movie. Now I would imagine that some of those people had never read the book and just voted for the movie.
Potentially,
probably, but who knows? That is one of the downsides of our poll. It does kind of require you to have done both in order to honestly participate in that poll. We're asking you which one's better, and if you haven't read it, then you can still vote, but
we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know, but it's not quite as honest of a vote because you're not comparing.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this. I think we'll get more of a response, and I think no matter what we do, there'll be a little bit of contention, and I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah. I think so too, and I think especially because we're both reading the books like we did for Harry Potter, and we're probably going to have a guest host of some sort without getting into specifics to kind of play the non-reading role. And so I think I wouldn't honestly be surprised if we even, because we will both pick which we thought was better, and we may have we may not pick the same thing.
Disagree.
Yeah, I have what I think my picks will be going in, having seen the movies so many times and having read most of the books a while ago, and now rereading the first one. I still have a feeling what I think I might end up picking, but I'm not sure, and I'm interested to see once I get done with these which way that goes. And same for you. So, yeah, I think it'll be controversial either way, and I think people will be interested in getting their voice heard about that. So
people definitely have strong feelings about this series.
Yeah.
Books and movies.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of Lord of the Rings, let's get right into that and preview Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the book.
Legend tells of a ring created by an ancient evil that gave its wearer the power to enslave the world. Believed lost for centuries, it has now been found.
Is it secret? Is it safe?
So I tried the best I could to narrow my facts to just volume 1.
Yeah.
Which was a little bit hard.
Yeah.
So
it's similar for the movies, to be fair.
This first time it is a little bit more of an overview, but I'm going to try not to repeat book facts.
Mine is the same way because of the way the movies were made. Mine is very similar.
So Fellowship of the Ring, obviously the first of 3 volumes of the epic fantasy novel The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yep.
Which that's correct, right? Tolkien?
I believe Tolkien.
Okay.
That's how I've always pronounced it.
So it is considered one novel in 3 volumes.
Yeah.
It's not technically not 3 separate novels. He initially, I skipped one. It was first published in 1954.
Okay.
Got that. And he initially envisioned The Lord of the Rings, as a single volume that was divided into 6 subsections.
Which my version, I don't know if yours is this way, my version of Fellowship is split into 2 books.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's book 1 and book 2.
Yeah. So that would make sense with his 6.
The ring sets out and then the ring heads south or something like that.
Yeah.
So he initially wanted it to be 6 sections along with extensive appendices.
Yeah. Famously.
Which, that's not how it ended up.
Yeah.
Really. But it was the original publisher that made the decision to split it into 3 volumes instead.
Okay.
So after the success of The Hobbit, which was published in 1936, so I
didn't realize that was that far before.
Yeah, it was a good bit of time, almost 20 years before. Publishers asked Tolkien for a sequel. He came back at them with The Lord of the Rings, which would go on to become his most famous work, obviously.
Yeah.
And he actually originally intended Lord of the Rings to be a children's story, more in the vein of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
But as he was writing, it very quickly grew a little dark, a little serious. So even though it is technically a sequel to The Hobbit, it is intended for a more adult audience.
Yeah. It's also, there's no way that reading the book now, kids can't read this book.
No.
Not or disregarding any amount of adult subject matter or anything that happens, violence, that sort, and being more dark. This is so dense and wordy,
it's too dense.
And there's so many names, and keeping it all straight would be impossible.
It would be a nightmare.
Which is one of the reasons I struggled so much reading them when I was younger, because I remember loving the movies, seeing the movies when I was 14 or whatever, and then trying to read these as a 14 or 15-year-old, and just I mean, you can do it. I read the first two and most of the third one, but man, it's not.
Yeah.
But I remember I read The Hobbit several times and liked that. It felt a lot more digestible to me.
Well, Hobbit is definitely a children's book.
Yeah.
But these are not.
No. No.
But what I do think is interesting, having read like the first couple of chapters, where I am right now, is that I feel like I can kind of see that in the very beginning, where it's a little more whimsical, and a little like more humorous, but it doesn't stay that way.
No.
So Tolkien spent over 10 years writing the whole thing, the whole shebang, with the support of his famous writing group, the Inklings. Other members of which included Owen Barfield, Neville Coghill, Hugo Dyson, who supposedly could not stand Lord of the Rings, and most famously C.S. Lewis, the author of Chronicles of Narnia, was also in the same group. So I'm going to talk reception of the Lord of the Rings a little bit. The poet W.H. Auden wrote a positive review in the New York Times. He said it was exciting. He said that Tolkien's invention is unflagging. And he also said, I thought this was kind of funny, the Fellowship of the Ring is at least as good as the 39 Steps.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. That's why I thought it was funny. However, he noted that the light humor in the beginning of the novel was, quote, not Tolkien's forte, which I kind of disagree with. I like the light humor
in the beginning has actually been pretty funny so far.
Yeah. This is not something from when it was first published, but I wanted to put this in here because I thought it was interesting. Michael Moorcock, who is another science fiction fantasy author, he's critical of The Lord of the Rings. He wrote an essay called Epic Pooh, in which he equated Tolkien's work to Winnie the Pooh and criticized it, among other works, for its Merry England point of view, like that kind of focus on the like idyllic pastoral time period that didn't actually exist.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. So, you know, it kind of received like mixed-ish critical reception. Some people really liked it. Some people really didn't like it. You know, not all that different to how people perceive it today.
Yeah.
But its mainstream popularity really kind of took off in the 1960s, thanks in part to the publication of paperback editions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The literary success of Lord of the Rings, on the other hand, took a little bit longer. That didn't really start to happen until close to the end of Tolkien's life. He died in 1973. So that was, 1970s and then on into the 1980s. Now, of course, Lord of the Rings is the subject of a pretty damn significant body of academic research.
Oh, yeah.
Mainly, not just, but mainly as the grandfather of modern fantasy.
Yeah.
And in regard to the creation of fictional languages, because Tolkien was a linguist. Yeah. And on that note, I'm assuming I don't need to spend a lot of time telling everyone how influential Tolkien was on the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that the modern fantasy landscape looks the way that it does, and that reason is Tolkien and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, despite whatever thoughts you may have on reading the series, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, the television show, you can thank J.R.R. Tolkien that exists, pretty much. So yeah. It's an interesting, the books are an interesting topic. So, I have a lot of facts about the movie. So let's get into it. Before we get into that, I looked up what the 39 Steps is. It's a series of 5 novels, from like the 20s or 30s or something, about a man who, it's like a spy thriller, basically. It's about a guy who's like on the run. He gets accused of killing like a spy, and then he has to go on the run or something. So it's kind of like an action adventure, like spy thriller thing. And there was a film adaptation directed by Alfred Hitchcock. in 1935. So.
Oh, I think I have. Maybe I thought that was called something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you like Lord of the Rings, it's at least as good as the 39
They're completely
steps,
different genres, I feel like.
So maybe you try that one as well.
But I guess the fellowship part where it's like on the run and they're like traveling and maybe there's some similarity there is why you compared it, maybe. I don't know. Without knowing much about that other book. But anyways, let's move on to Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the film.
I know what I must do, but I'm afraid to do it.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
There is no other way. There's something down there.
So, boy, I have a lot of stuff here, and this isn't even beginning to cover it. This movie had a wild and twisty-turny production process and pre-production and everything, and I'm sure a lot of people, probably even people that listen to the show, know more about this than I do, or remember stuff they've heard from watching all the special features on the extended edition DVDs and all that sort of thing, where they talked about all this stuff. But it's a 2001 film directed by Peter Jackson. Just kind of some base stuff here. It was nominated for 13 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Sir Ian McKellen, and it won 4 Oscars. One for cinematography, one for makeup, one for Best Original Score, and one for visual effects.
Which is not a small feat for a genre film.
No, and we'll get to it with The Return of the King, but everybody knows how that one went when it got to the Oscars. I believe it was also nominated for 13 or 11 and won every single one of them. Peter Jackson first came into contact with Lord of the Rings with the 1978 Ralph Bakshi version, which we just talked about the other day, because the movie Wizards, which is another Ralph Bakshi film, was on TV, and I was like, hey, it's the guy that did animated Lord of the Rings. So he saw that, it intrigued him, and then he read the book on like a single 12-hour train ride or something, and kind of fell in love with it. In 1995, Jackson was finishing The Frighteners. He was considering doing Lord of the Rings as a new project, and he wondered why nobody else seemed to be doing anything with it, because he thought it was just this great story that why is nobody making anything with this. So Jackson and his partner, who is his writing partner, directing partner, and also his spouse partner, I don't know if they're married or they have 2 children together, Fran Walsh, they teamed up with Miramax boss Harvey Weinstein to negotiate with Saul Zaentz, I don't know how to pronounce that, who had held the rights to the book since the early 1970s. I don't know who Saul Zaentz, Zaentz is, but apparently this person had the rights to the book since the 70s.
So he was just like sitting on them.
Yeah. Maybe a producer. I don't know. And Jackson and Fran Walsh with Weinstein pitched an adaptation of The Hobbit and 2 of the films based on the Lord of the Rings series. So they were going to make 3 total films. One of them was going to be The Hobbit, and 2 of them were going to be The Lord of the Rings.
Oof.
And then it gets crazy. There was a whole bunch of issues with rights and who had the rights for stuff. And then also Jackson was offered to do a remake of King Kong, which eventually he does do. And that got everything all muddied up. And he was going to go do King Kong, but then he ended up not doing King Kong until later after he finished Lord of the Rings. So there was all kinds of stuff going on. But a bunch of stuff happened. But eventually they started working on a script. And originally, the way this was going to work when they were going to make it 2 films was that the first movie would cover books 1, 2, and some of 3.
What?
All the way up, basically what I read was all the way up until the death of Saruman was when the first movie was going to cover. And then the second movie was going to be just the rest of it, which is just basically the Battle of Minas Tirith, kind of.
That's wild.
Yeah. This version was wildly different from what we ended up getting. Here's just a brief handful of things that were originally going to happen in those original treatments that they wrote. Gollum attacks Frodo when the Fellowship is still united, which I believe might happen in the book. I can't remember. These characters were all included: Farmer Maggot, Glorfindel, Radagast the Brown, Elladan, and Elrohir. All of those characters are present. Bilbo actually attends the Council of Elrond. Sam is the one who looks into Galadriel's mirror, and Saruman is redeemed before he dies, among many other changes. Also, one thing that I thought was wild, when it was 2 movies, they considered having Arwen absorb Eowyn's role entirely and have her kill the Witch King in the final. They were just going to cut Eowyn completely from the films and just have Arwen be that role all the way through.
So now you've got 2 female characters, and your big plan is to cut one of them.
Cut one of them.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I don't know whose idea that was, but yeah. They decided it, and they initially agreed on a $75 million budget for the 2 films. They thought that would work. Ended up actually taking they realized it was going to take $150 million after they started the beginning of the pre-production process and working with Weta Studios to build sets and build props and all this stuff. And so Bob Weinstein presented a single 2-hour version of the 3 books. And this version included completely cutting Helm's Deep, which how dare he?
It's a little bit important, though.
Yeah, how dare he? Peter Jackson was upset by the idea of cutting out half of the good stuff, is what his quote was. He balked on it, and Miramax, who's the Weinstein company, declared that any script or work completed by Weta Workshop at this point was theirs. Jackson didn't buy this. He went around Hollywood for about a month, showing 35-minute video of the work that him and Weta and stuff had been doing in New Zealand. Again, getting the sets and sort of the videos, the special effects and stuff they were working on. Showed it for about 4 weeks in Hollywood before eventually he met with New Line Cinema's Mark Ordesky. And as everybody knows, New Line Cinema is who ends up producing these movies. At New Line Cinema, Robert Shea watched this video that Jackson had put together and then asked why they were making 2 films when the book was published as 3 volumes.
That seems really obvious.
Apparently that was not hyperbolic. What's the word for a thing that is story that is not true, but everybody hears that's got a name that I can't.
Oh, I mean,
you know what I'm talking about?
A rumor, a myth?
No, it's got a different name, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Anyways, this was later corrected. New Line only made this choice for economical reasons, apparently, not because the guy said this. It's like hyperbolic, but it's not. And now it's driving me nuts that I can't remember that word. So they decided to make a trilogy. So then now Jackson, Fran Walsh, and his other partner, Boyens, had to write 3 new scripts. So they ended up writing 3 entirely new scripts, only loosely based on their previous treatments that they had made. Not loosely, obviously, but like they changed a bunch of stuff again. So famously, all 3 of these movies were filmed concurrently over a 2-year period in New Zealand. All of the filming took place in New Zealand. Filming took place, primary filming took place from October 11th, 1999 through December 22nd of 2000. And then pickup shots were conducted annually from 2001 to 2004, which is as they finished the post-production process on all 3 of the films. And each film, one of the good things, had the benefit of an entire year of post-production time before its respective December release. So they filmed all 3 movies over the course of about 2 years in New Zealand, but they filmed them in order, roughly. So like all of the Fellowship stuff got filmed first, and then they spent a year editing that for its 2001 release date. And same thing kind of as they went. The production process was not without its problems. One of the ones I saw here is that the New Zealand Department of Conservation was criticized for approving the filming within national parks without adequate consideration of the adverse environmental effects and without notifying the public. And apparently there were some issues that they had to do restoration at several parks for the damage that happened as a result of filming and that sort of thing. So when you have a giant film crew there.
All those people tromping around.
Yeah. All right, so that was most of the notes I had, and there's a million things more you could read. You could write. I know there are full novels about making of Lord of the Rings. It was a crazy process. But the last thing I wanted to do, as I was looking at the casting for these films, I want to play a game of what role did this weird actor almost get? So. First, a couple of these, I'm going to say several actors. They were both considered for the same role. You're guessing what role?
Okay, I'm guessing the role.
This actor or plural actors
are these all roles that ultimately ended up with in the movies? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. These are all. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not guessing characters that didn't make.
No. These are all the people that are actually all characters in the film. This is just other actors that were either, and I have details about some of them. Some of them were either offered the roles or auditioned and that sort of thing. So, first one, Daniel Day-Lewis and Nick Cage were both offered this role. Both turned it down.
Let me think. Well, Nick Cage is Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Day-Lewis, I mainly know from A Room with a View, so that doesn't help me. Not really. Aragorn?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. They were both offered. And Daniel Day-Lewis, Lincoln.
Yeah.
A bunch of Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, yeah, he was in that. That was that guy.
He's the butcher in Gangs of New York. He's been in a fair number. He doesn't do a lot of movies, but he does this big roles. He's like a famous character actor, you know.
Right. I mean, like when you achieve that level of success, you can pick and choose.
Yeah, right? He's very picky about what he does, but he gets very into his characters. They were both offered the role, turned it down. Vin Diesel auditioned for the role because as most people have heard about Vin Diesel, he's a big like Dungeons and Dragons like fantasy fan. He's a big nerd about that kind of stuff. He really loves the books, so he auditioned for Aragorn, which. I mean, go for it, man. But I don't think you fit. I don't know. When I think about Vin Diesel, I don't particularly strike me as like Aragorn.
It would have had like a more of a Conan the Barbarian.
He just does. Yeah, his. I've never seen him be that sort of reserved, pensive, like loner. That doesn't strike me as his wheelhouse. But I don't know. And then, as a lot of people probably know, somebody else was cast as Aragorn. And they filmed for a while with a different Aragorn.
Oh, I've heard this, but I don't remember who it is.
He's not a really well-known person, but his name was Stuart Townsend. He was actually cast and replaced during filming because one of the reasons Peter Jackson thought he looked too young. Which, if you see pictures of this guy, there's only like one or two out there of him like that I was able to find of him in like Aragorn costume. There's other like photoshopped ones and stuff, but there's at least one picture that looks like an actual production still of him in the costume. And he does look a little too young, a little too like pretty for the role. But the only other thing people might know him from, I think that the biggest role that I knew him from is he plays Dorian Gray in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie, which is like it's not a good movie, but he plays Dorian Gray in that. But yeah, he was cast and then replaced because they just wasn't working out. All right, next one. Lucy Lawless.
What do I know her from?
Lucy Lawless is Xena.
Okay.
Warrior Princess.
I am on the same page as you now. Well, I have two options here. She has dark hair, so I'm gonna guess Arwen.
No.
Oh, okay.
I think what was your other guess? I think you have more than options than you thought. You had probably at least 3 options and you forgot one of them.
Do I? Did I?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're thinking of Arwen and Eowyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you forgot Galadriel.
Oh, Galadriel, yes.
Peter Jackson wanted Lucy Lawless for the role of Galadriel, but she was pregnant at the time and couldn't do it. But Jackson wanted for the role.
I don't know. Cate Blanchett is just so ethereal.
Oh, she's perfect. And Lucy Lawless could have done it, I think, but I definitely think I think every single one of these that I'm going through here, they absolutely ended up in a better place with the people they got, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, who's to say? You never know. Like, I'm sure Daniel Day-Lewis would have played a fine Aragorn, but like, anyways. Next one. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal. Boy, he would have been a baby.
Pretty young. 99. He's not a baby, but yeah.
Yeah,
but like early 20s probably. Because I mean, this is about the time Donnie Darko came out.
Yeah. Legolas?
Frodo. He auditioned for Frodo. A bunch of people auditioned for Frodo, including Elijah Wood. And Elijah Wood was the first actor cast. He was a big fan of the books, and he came dressed as Frodo to the audition.
Oh my god, that's adorable.
And did lines from the book for them.
That's so cute.
And he was the first person cast in the movie. Next one. Let's go with... This one's easy. I'll give you an easy one that you'll get. Sean Connery and Patrick Stewart. I think this is easy.
I mean, Gandalf would be my guess.
Yeah. Sean Connery was offered the role, turned it down because he didn't understand the plot. And Patrick Stewart turned down the role because he didn't like the script, apparently.
Okay.
So yeah, they were both offered, which is funny because Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are such good friends now, as everybody knows because of social media. But yeah, Patrick Stewart was offered the role. Only a couple more here, and they're fun ones. Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman. Eowyn?
She was offered Arwen.
Okay.
But was pregnant and couldn't do it. Or Jackson, I don't know if she was offered officially the role, but Jackson wanted her for the role of Arwen, but she was pregnant at the time and couldn't do it. And finally, David Bowie.
David Bowie. I mean, I feel like you wouldn't cast David Bowie as anything other than an elf. I feel like.
Not giving anything away.
I know, but your body language is... I'm going to go ahead and guess Elrond.
Yes.
Nice.
He was never offered the role. He expressed interest in wanting to play the role of Elrond, and Jackson politely turned him down, stating, quote, "To have a famous, beloved character and a famous star colliding would be slightly uncomfortable." I think his concern being that putting somebody like David Bowie in that role would... Because at this time, most of the actors and actresses in this movie are not huge household names. The biggest name is Christopher Lee, like as Saruman, maybe. Like,
I don't know how big Cate Blanchett was
at the time. Probably not that big.
Yeah, but a lot of the other ones weren't.
Like
really,
Viggo Mortensen was like a nobody. They found him as they cast him because one of the producers or something saw him in a stage play and was like, he'll be good. And when they replaced the other guy. Elijah Wood had been in stuff, but what, like he was kind of a child star in some, like he was in a couple kids movies that were kind of big and stuff, but he's not like a big, like, nobody was David Bowie level.
Right. No, I can see, and especially with him being a pop star and not an actor. Yeah. I can see where the concern would be that would be like distracting and he would become like the main focus, especially of like the advertising campaigns. Yeah.
I forgot I have one more.
Okay.
And this is a two-person one.
Just real quick, though, that would have been iconic.
Oh, it would have been amazing.
That would have been patently amazing.
It would have been amazing. I mean, what's his name? And now I can't remember his name. Hugo Weaving does a fantastic job. But yeah, no, David Bowie as Elrond would have been incredible. My last one, I forgot I had this. Liam Neeson and Bruce Willis.
Liam Neeson and Bruce Willis.
For the same role.
For the I feel like I have guessed a lot of the main characters. I'm gonna guess Legolas.
It's another member of the Fellowship, Boromir.
Oh, okay.
Liam Neeson was offered the role of Boromir, but turned it down.
Oh, damn, I forgot about Boromir.
Yeah.
Poor Boromir.
Yeah. Liam Neeson was offered it, turned it down, and Bruce Willis was a fan of the book. Or books, and expressed interest in the role. He was never offered it or anything, but he wanted to play the role. But
interesting.
I'm glad they didn't cast Bruce Willis. Liam Neeson would have been fine. I mean, Sean Bean is great. He does probably like one of the best performances in that first movie. I think it is. I think he does a lot of work with what he's given. But Bruce Willis would have been a nightmare. Again, see, Bruce Willis is one of those ones. If they had cast that, Bruce Willis is like, if you cast Bruce Willis. That's what an actor on the level of like that David Bowie, where it's like, that's Bruce Willis. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's one of the biggest movie stars in the world in 1990, even a little beyond his, but like, it's after Die Hard and Pulp Fiction and all this stuff. He's huge. And the biggest person in the movie is Christopher Lee. We don't need, I'm saying that I'm sure there's somebody that I'm not thinking of that's like a bigger name, but I can't. John Rhys Davies, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
He's like a second fiddle in Indiana Jones movies. Like, But yeah, so that was all I had. I thought that was interesting when I was going through all those characters, all the other people that we could have ended up with a Fellowship that was Nicolas Cage, Jake Gyllenhaal, Sean Connery, Bruce Willis, Uma Thurman. She's not part of the Fellowship, but... I mean, that movie would be nuts. Yeah, if all of those people had been cast. Same thing for Nick Cage, though. He's another one of those people. But that's weird because they offered him the role. Yeah. But he's another one of those people where it's like, Nick Cage is Nick Cage. Yeah. And if you get Nick Cage in that role, it's like, all I'm seeing is Nick Cage playing this. Yeah. Yeah.
He would have done the most with it because he's Nick Cage.
I don't know if it would have been great. Nick Cage is a great actor.
Not that it would have been great, just that he would have done the most.
True. He's a good actor, but he just fits certain roles, and I'm not sure he fits Aragorn. Yeah. So I'm glad he turned that one down. Personally. That's all I had, though. We're talking about the movie next week. 1 week. Boy, we have a lot to read.
Yes, we do.
So come back in 1 week's time. Hopefully we get it done in time and don't have to push it back a day or two. But we'll do our best for 1 week from today. Hear us talk about Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. What else do I say about that?
You remind people about social media.
Oh, yeah. You can check us out on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. We also, Goodreads and Reddit.
Yeah.
We also, if you could do us a favor, rate and review us on iTunes. We're one review away or rating away from 50.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything, but it's a round number.
50 is a nice round number.
So check us out on iTunes and do that. That would be cool. Give us a rating and a review. And until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.